Ah, Sword and Sandals films. Can't get enough of them. Usually tend to look back on films of the past and recollect all those famous films that we've all come to akin, but then again, time has gone on. Those movies are practically no longer popular, or it would seem that way. But then a little known movie will come out and help kind of put some much needed revitalization, if you will, of that said genre. And to this day, we still sometimes get one of these movies nowadays, and it's all because of this movie.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Gladiator is directed by Ridley Scott with a screenplay by David Franzoni, John Logan, and William Nicholson, and a story by David Franzoni. Film stars Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, Connie Nielsen, Oliver Reed, Derek Jacobi, Djimon Hounson, and Richard Harris. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, a former Roman general sets out to exact vengeance against the corrupt emperor who murdered his family and sent him into slavery. Ridley Scott has been building his career with the likes of movies of Alien, Blade Runner, and even something like Thelma and Louise. But for a very long time, Ridley Scott has had a prolific career with regards to the movies that he wants to make, how he wants them to look and feel, and how he wants to transport audiences into that said world that he is creating. And it's funny how Scott's next big film would be pretty much a throwback to a genre which I said at the beginning of this video, which is the sword and sandal film that was kind of more of akin to the movies like Ben-Hur and Spartacus. Those are usually the go-getters with regards to those types of films, and those films have stood the test of time with regards to how we usually see a lot of movies like that being made. This would eventually become his historical epic, Gladiator, as you see here. I have always heard about this film and its reputation for years. Had never seen it. I have always known about it. I've always known how much that people really love this movie and how entertaining, if you will, that they've always enjoyed about this movie. Is hold a huge lasting impact with regards to historical epics, how they are approached, and how they are seen on the big screen as a whole. In preparation for this sequel, because of course Ridley Scott at this point in his career is like, well, I got nothing left, so might as well make a sequel to one of my movies. I wanted to watch this movie before seeing the sequel, because it wouldn't make any sense to go into that movie and thinking that this is made, of course, for fans who love that first movie, but really just for general audiences to go in and see. But in order for myself to get any sort of attachment, or at the very least get some interest in this said sequel, I figured, okay, I'll watch the first movie. Let's see how it is. Maybe there's some things that have not aged super well, but it's all right. Hopefully it'll be good. And after seeing it, I can 100% agree that it's one of Scott's best movies to date. Up there with like Blade Runner. It's fantastic film that is well put together, well crafted, and so epic in so many ways that it's crazy to me. And I will use this phrase, I think maybe a lot in this video, but still, they do not make movies like this anymore. Even today, they truly don't make movies like this. I couldn't find a single problem. I'm being as honest as I can be with you guys. I couldn't find a single problem at all with the movie, which is very rare for a movie of this caliber. Usually there could be something that is amiss or something that hasn't aged all that well. I couldn't find anything, so let's just now get into the positives that I found. Performances are fantastic, through the roof. From Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, Connie Nielsen to Oliver Reed, Djimon Hounson, and Richard Harris. Everyone does a stellar job. This is a top tier cast if I've ever seen it. You have Russell Crowe at the height of his career. He's starting to take off, and for him to take on this role, and then of course this role would land him his first Oscar win, is incredible because he is so magnificent and so captivating as Maximus Decimus Meridius. This man is very interesting in who he is, how the people see him, and how he is trying to live out his days of wanting to just be with his wife and son. That is taken away, of course, with Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus, and how he wants to be the ruler of this new set Rome when Richard Harris wants Maximus Decimus Meridius to be the head of New Rome and to give that power back to the people. Commodus, he don't like that. And so to have this cast bring such talent and such raw emotion, I think speaks volumes to how talented these actors can be and still are to this day, or at least some will have a lasting impact because of movies like this. The direction is excellent. Director Ridley Scott brings raw energy and focus by bringing Rome to life. It's fully immersive to you, the audience, on how much Ridley Scott wants you to feel like you are back in Rome. He puts the emphasis on how big and grand the Romans are at this time and how powerful they can be and how strong they can be. But it is crazy to me, in the opening sequence of this movie, a battle sequence, it is amazing that today you hardly see something like this. Otherwise, they would probably get like a few people and they'll just fill it out with green screen. Back then, he had hundreds, dozens of extras for just one battle sequence, and it's incredible. It really makes you truly live and breathe the time period in which this movie is taking place. And it's amazing to see Ridley Scott bring that talent and vibrant energy that he has always brought to his movies. The action is brutal. Every action scene shows the bloody and visceral depiction of these gladiator fights. It truly makes it entertaining. It is incredible on how much the action still holds up pretty well and how believable it can be. Of course, this is a movie. There's bound to be some things that are not accurate with regards to how everyone fought in this film. I mean, people can still think about the two swords chopping off the head. I mean, yeah, that's a little overkill, but don't deny it. It's pretty cool. And the way Scott handles those action sequences with emergence and intensity as it builds up, or at the very least, adding things to the Colosseum to get Maximus or any of the other slaves to fight, made for a very intense and very interesting film that kept you engaged. It kept you focused and glued to the screen, and you couldn't look away from it. I couldn't at all. Throughout this entire runtime, I couldn't look away from how amazing and just incredibly talented everything was put together with regards to those sequences. The music is incredible. Composers Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerarda makes a score that is both grand and epic from beginning to end. Easily one of the best scores of all time. I'm being serious when I say that is some of the best music I've ever seen for a movie of this caliber, because of how well both Hans Zimmer and Lisa Guerrero really brought in the orchestral but also the feeling of how grand Rome is and how prosperous it feels. And when those horns, violins, or vocals come in, it's like music to my ears. It gets me all excited, it gets me so pumped, but it gets me really intrigued on what this movie is. And because of these two composers making this score, it adds so much depth to the movie. Cinematography is gorgeous. Cinematographer John Matheson captures a stunning and beautiful looking film that shows Rome's power on full display. He also does well at shooting the action sequences, how the camera moves, how it widens to see the full scale of Rome, but also how interpersonal he can make it with regards to those gladiator fights. I think adds character, it adds emergence, it adds raw emotion with regards to how well it's shot, how it is framed, how focused it is. It's all beautiful. It's all gorgeous. The writing is solid. Writers Franzoni, Logan, and Nicholson pens a script that makes it insightful and hopeful when a society loses sight on a beautiful future, making it inspirational on how characters talk about where Rome could go. What is the glory of Rome? What is the purpose of our society? What is the purpose of our life? And to see these characters have these moments, these discussions, these conversations, it adds depth into what a society can be. Hope for humanity, if you will. But if we allow leaders, blind leaders, leaders who are seeking power and to control others, it adds so much with regards to the circumstance of how it is today and how, we know the outcome of Rome, but it's stories like these that kind of make us think, can there be a bright future for humanity, but also just for society? Can it continue on? Can we find hope in the darkness? Can we find that light that is shimmering or glimmering, if you will, on this dark world that we find ourselves in? The story is epic, following Maximus, a dishonored general, trying to avenge his wife, son, and former emperor by going against the emperor's son, made for a grand plot. It's a tale people will remember if you have seen this movie. It is one that I think a lot of people will still remember. especially for the era it came out, which is the 2000s, very early on, and to see this story being played out, how it's told, how it is executed, feels right, feels emotional, and it feels intense all at the same time. It gets you really excited to see where this movie goes and how this movie will end in a way that can at least leave you feeling like there is some hope in something. The production is amazing. The amount of talent and skill is unreal, from the costumes, props, and sets is all terrific. When they say that movies like these don't get made enough today, I really mean that, and I agree with a lot of people when they say that. And that is, yeah, movies like these just aren't made like how they used to. Having hundreds of extras, these grand sets. There's just not a lot of that nowadays. Most of it is usually taken up by visual effects. And don't get me wrong, there are some movies that do that very well, but let's be honest, when movies like these come out, we have to take in this feeling of no matter how that movie is, the amount of detail that went into the look of these movies is incredible to me, on how much they really want you to feel like you are there, feeling like this is a livable, breathable place. And the production team did such an amazing job with making this feel like how Rome was at the time. Pacing and runtime works well. It may seem slow. I'm not going to deny that. It may seem like a very slow movie, but it works perfectly with how this movie is supposed to be. I know that's like something that I would be against, but because of how well told this movie was, I really kept myself invested and glued to the screen. The pacing and runtime did not bother me. With a run hour, 2 hours and 35 minutes, it feels right. I think for a movie of this nature and of this scale, I think it works perfectly for making this feel as epic as it can be at 2.5 hours. I know that could make or break people these days, but for myself, it works. And that's usually surprising because that would be a problem for me. But for this movie, I make an exception. The editing is precise. Each scene feels like it's rightfully connective and fluid as it goes along. It's consistent as it continues on. And that's what I like about a movie like this, is when knowing how the editing can play into the film, how it all feels, how this movie is going to flow, how it's going to keep the movie going. And the editing on this movie is done so well that I couldn't see a fault with how it's put together. It all feels like it was all put together in a way that feels oh so perfect. There's a reason why it's a fantastic film, but one that truly fits the description of they don't make them like they used to anymore. I mean that. They really do not make movies like these. And this is kind of sad. It's one that continues to be respected as time goes on. This is truly an epic. It's epic in so many ways, and I think it will always be remembered as a huge epic film of this nature. I'm going to give Gladiator a 10 out of 10. I think this is fantastic. If anybody has a chance to watch this, I highly recommend it. I think you'll find yourself very much entertained, if you will. And I couldn't get enough of this, and because of this movie, I was so excited now to see what the sequel could be. So, speaking of which, now I will be covering Gladiator 2 next, and then soon Wicked. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.